The Call.
Shalom, and welcome to The Call, Part 2. I'm glad you can make it. My name is Yashayahu, and I will be your host for the duration of this video. We're going to go a little bit deeper in the call to see those who are challenging those who are calling themselves the Jewish people. We're going to see what their plight holds. Let's see what we find out.
Slaves work and work done by slaves. So slaves built up the economy of the nations, not just America.
When Yah says, "You shall serve your enemies," he meant exactly that. I mean, seriously, exactly that. And just like the 40 days and 40 nights, the flood can be accounted for, when Yah does a thing, he always leaves a record to make sure that the world knows that he means what he says. Let's check this out.
Slavery, the treatment of human beings as property, deprived of personal rights, has occurred in many forms throughout the world. But one institution stands out for both its global scale and its lasting legacy. The Atlantic slave trade, occurring from the late 15th to the mid-19th century and spanning 3 continents, forcibly brought more than 10 million Africans to the Americas. The impact it would leave affected not only these slaves and their descendants, but the economies and histories of large parts of the world. There had been centuries of contact between Europe and Africa via the Mediterranean, but the Atlantic slave trade began in the late 1400s with Portuguese colonies in West Africa and Spanish settlement of the Americas shortly after. The crops grown in the new colonies, sugarcane, tobacco, and cotton, were labor-intensive, and there were not enough settlers or indentured servants to cultivate all the new land. American natives were enslaved, but many died from new diseases, while others effectively resisted. And so, to meet the massive demand for labor, the Europeans looked to Africa. African slavery had existed for centuries in various forms. Some slaves were indentured servants, with a limited term and the chance to buy one's freedom. Others were more like European serfs. In some societies, slaves could be part of a master's family, own land, and even rise to positions of power. But when white captains came offering manufactured goods, weapons, and rum for slaves, African kings and merchants had little reason to hesitate. They viewed the people they sold not as fellow Africans, but criminals, debtors, or prisoners of war from rival tribes. By selling them, kings enriched their own realms and strengthened them against neighboring enemies. African kingdoms prospered from the slave trade, but meeting the Europeans' massive demand created intense competition. Slavery replaced other criminal sentences, and capturing slaves became a motivation for war rather than its result. To defend themselves from slave raids, neighboring kingdoms needed European firearms, which they also bought with slaves. The slave trade had become an arms race, altering societies and economies across the continent. As for the slaves themselves, they faced unimaginable brutality. After being marched to slave forts on the coast, shaved to prevent lice, and branded, they were loaded onto ships bound for the Americas. About 20% of them would never see land again. Most captains of the day were tight packers, cramming as many men as possible below deck. While the lack of sanitation caused many to die of disease, and others were thrown overboard for being sick or as discipline, the captains ensured their profits by cutting off slaves' ears as proof of purchase. Some captives took matters into their own hands. Many inland Africans had never seen whites before and thought them to be cannibals, constantly taking people away and returning for more. Afraid of being eaten, or just to avoid further suffering, they committed suicide or starved themselves, believing that in death their souls would return home. Those who survived were completely dehumanized, treated as mere cargo. Women and children were kept above deck and abused by the crew, while the men were made to perform dances in order to keep them exercised and curb rebellion. What happened to those Africans who reached the New World, and how the legacy of slavery still affects their descendants today, is fairly well known. But what is not often discussed is the effect that the Atlantic slave trade had on Africa's future. Not only did the continent lose tens of millions of its able-bodied population, but because most of the slaves taken were men, the long-term demographic effect was even greater. When the slave trade was finally outlawed in the Americas and Europe, the African kingdoms whose economies it had come to dominate collapsed, leaving them open to conquest and colonization. And the increased competition and influx of European weapons fueled warfare and instability that continues to this day. The Atlantic slave trade also contributed to the development of racist ideology. Most African slavery had no deeper reason than legal punishment or intertribal warfare, but the Europeans who preached a universal religion and who had long ago outlawed enslaving fellow Christians needed justification for a practice so obviously at odds with their ideals of equality. So they claimed that Africans were biologically inferior and destined to be slaves, making great efforts to justify this theory. Thus, slavery in Europe and the Americas acquired a racial basis, making it impossible for slaves and their future descendants to attain equal status in society. In all of these ways, the Atlantic slave trade was an injustice on a massive scale, whose impact has continued long after its abolition.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 32, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. We just saw that. And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. So we just seen a part of them actually on the slave ship and those who made it to land, but we haven't really seen the effects of that. We got a lot to still to yet to cover.
I can't imagine being sold off at an auction. I mean, people auction things, things. You go on Craigslist, that's pretty much an auction. You got many different things that people auction off now. Like things that is used, old, no one wants. Even people are auction off shoes. They auction off commodities. People auction off cameras all the time. People are always auctioning off things. People even auction off keyboards. But this auction was a total different type of auction. But the thing, or people I should say, are being auctioned off were considered to be just like these things. They were property. It wasn't just a regular auction. These people will be auctioned off just like a material possession, to do whatever you want to do with. So if I wanted to take this keyboard and slam it down on the ground, by the fact that it's mine, you can't tell me that I was wrong. That's exactly how they viewed the slaves or branded. It's like the same thing as taking and putting your name on your keyboard, or putting your name on your speaker right there, or putting your name on your on your phone. It's your property. So they branded their names on their so-called property. Man, when you see the things that these people are going through, it makes you wonder, how they ever survive? Let's take a look.
You shall serve your enemies. Now look at these right here. These are actual slave auction blocks that our ancestors once stood upon. This one, let me mark this one, and this one, right? This is in Kentucky. And I think I saw it one time, but I'm not sure. But when I saw that it was in Kentucky, I was appalled. But it makes sense. So, Cheapside slave auction block. This is literally the block, not the block that they stand on, but this is the block where they literally auctioned off the slaves. This is the area where they did it. African Americans were sold as slaves as what? Cheapside auction block on the public square in the 19th century. Lexington was the center of slave trading in Kentucky by the late 1840s and served as a market for selling slaves farther south. Thousands of slaves were sold at Cheapside, including children who were separated from their parents. We just got to see in the verse of scripture on that one, right? But this is the block that they stood on. Right here. On this sire, slaves were bought and sold. They stood on this. And people came by and purchased them. Still matching scripture. Here we go. Sold. Being auctioned off to our enemies. Here we go right here. They're doing examining. They're examining her mouth, her teeth, and the child is holding on the arm. This is my mommy. Not knowing that he could be separated from his mom right now. Can you imagine that baby crying? But no one, not him, not none of them would care that this baby is crying because his mom has been sold off to one of them. I want her, but I don't want the baby. And then the child has to literally deal with never ever seeing his mama again. To fend on his own. I just want that to sink in. How they themselves are branding this woman, but they themselves would never ever brand themselves. Not the way that they're branding them. She's being branded like cattle, and our ancestors, all of them, were branded. Slaves were branded. You shall serve your enemies. You will become the property of your enemies. Deuteronomy 28:46. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. That. Look at all these things that's upon our lives to this day. Disease, sickness, right? Heart attacks, diabetes, right? So many different things that we're dealing with, right? Look at this. This person doesn't look happy. It's a slavery that he's never ever known. Look at this. Treated like animals, properties. Look at this. To be sold, a cargo. These is real things that were back in the day where people would see papers like this that's the slaves were going to be auctioned off. Look at this. We want this person apprehended. He ran away. $10 reward will be given for any information that will lead to the apprehension of a Negro boy named Amos, belonging to the East State of Mrs. Mary Steele of Rowan County. This boy was arrested on a state's warrant in Mecklenburg County on the 23rd November 1st when I became his bail, and a short time after he absconded. Since which time I have been unable to obtain information of him. And this boy ran away. Hopefully Yah helped him get away and live. Hopefully he did. They probably want to kill this boy anyway. Let's go.
Now, it's been stated that the slaves worked very hard. We're going to look at how hard they really worked. And we're going to also look at things that they stereotype us with that really doesn't seem to make sense. Like, you lazy, good for nothing. We're just going to see if any of those kind of stereotypes hold up. All right, let's check this out.
The harsh life continued. What? Slaves were bought and sold like property, usually were used as field workers or as house slave. Worked morning until night. Very hard work. Could be whipped and punished by the overseer. Many died at an early age, so they didn't even live to see full life.
Woo. Man, some deep stuff, right? But look, there will be those who will try to minimize the slave work that was done by slaves. They would say it was just menial type of tasks. But you have to understand is this. This type of slavery, it wasn't like a bond servant, where a bond servant comes into an agreement to pay off a debt. Now that we'll get a little bit more into as the plot thickens. Okay. This slavery right here is you don't have any say. In fact, to say something could get your tongue cut out. Or worse, you can get hanged. But also this slavery, there is no protection. So, you know how we do like late shifts now? That is something you might volunteer for. This slavery, there was no volunteering. You had no choice because you had no voice. You were forced to work hard labor all day long. And don't even think about trying to take a rest or go take a nap. Many of us might have the opportunity right now to get a 30-minute lunch or maybe even a 15-minute break within the hour. So you get 15 minutes, then another 15 minutes, and then you get a 30-minute lunch. That's if you're working over 6 hours or roughly around 6 hours. They have to give you that by state. And back at this time, none of those rights or of those laws was in effect for these people right here. None. They had to work from can see to can't see. Let's take a look.
history records. Now, the antebellum American South by law, slaves had no say in what tasks they were required to do. So you couldn't say, I don't want to do this. You had to do it. All right. As by legal definition, they were considered property. You will serve your enemies. And afforded none of the Constitution, civil, or criminal legal protections. So the U.S. Constitution did not protect you. None of the civil rights were yours. You could not say this was criminal acts being done against you because you were not protected. No man will save you, right? Criminal legal protections afforded to any citizen of the United States. They also had no control over the length of their working day, meaning there was no, like today, you go to work, you had to get, after 6 hours or so in certain parts, you have to get like a 30-minute break or a 15-minute break. You didn't have that. You work from sun up to sundown, or you can't see at night. That was your work. That was their work day. Okay, all right. They also had no control over the length of their working day, which was usually from sun up in the morning to sunset in the evening. Can see to can't see in the slaves' language. As such, slaves' work was whatever their owner required of them. They labored mostly in menial agricultural work, but really in whatever task that was not so totally unnecessary that a machine could not do it for a fraction of the price. So pretty much they try to make everything seems less than what it is. Like, well, they really didn't really do that much hard work. That's a lie. It's a lie. Don't let them tell you them lies. Menial tasks. No. They did any task that was asked of them. Because a lot of these people who are calling you lazy, their people was lazy. And that's why they went and got slaves to do their lazy work. And then they have the nerve to call you lazy. You got something for that. All right, let's go. All right, so as such, slaves' work was whatever their owner required of them. They labored mostly in menial agricultural work, but really in whatever task that was not so totally unnecessary that a machine could not do it for a fraction of the price. Since the South was lightly industrialized at this time, few tasks fit this criteria. Although slaves were used in the northern states in factories to produce manufactured goods, at least prior to those states abolishing slavery, most slaves worked on plantations in the southern states. Slaves were used on plantations for a variety of tasks. Picking cotton was one of them. Harvesting sugar cane. It's the slaves cutting sugar cane. In harvesting rice. There's some slaves working in the field. Tobacco fields. There's some slaves working in the tobacco fields. Growing and harvesting coffee. Good old Starbucks, right? Dutch brothers, right? Everything that made the world go round, the slaves were doing. They were the engine of it. Building railroads. Oh my goodness. Transportation. In the dairy. You mean ice cream? Everyone loves ice cream. You scream. We all scream. We all love ice cream, right? We all scream for ice cream, right? You scream ice cream. We all scream for ice cream. Got the little dairy. Slaves weaving. Oh my, what? Baskets? Everything. You might need a basket for your home. Slaves built houses. Oh, wait a minute. Slaves were not allowed to sleep in houses they helped build or did build. It says we built it. Now there's a video of some Caucasians laying down the foundation, if you will. Not well, the beginning, like the concrete and everything, but you know that they did everything else. Anything that they didn't want to do, they did it. They put up everything. Anything that they didn't want to do, that's what they did. Slaves helped build the White House. Slaves washing clothes. They were the dishwasher. They were the dryer. Well, actually, the dryer was actually outside, like the wind blow. But there was the washing machine. Slaves were the washing machine before one was ever built. Did the cooking. Wait a minute, we're doing all the tasks that they don't want to do. Slaves were the chefs as well as the help. They helped cut the meat. Meat butchers.
Now, you have to be blind or just do not want to see that these people fit the bill of the prophecy. They fit every single prophecy pertaining to slavery, pertaining to being another nation coming in to take them from the land. They were literally kidnapped, plucked from the land. Versus the other people who were, look, you have to show us your papers. Mind you, they're in the place where they have to show their papers. So they're already on the land. They're not being plucked from the land. They're being asked to show some papers. It wasn't another nation coming against them from another place to take them off of the land or kidnap them. No, they're on the land, and the people who have to be on the land with them says, all right, we need to see that you really are who you say you are. And we seen from the call one why that was. There was a deal that went bad with Hitler. Hitler could have won the war, but he was told to literally throw the war, to lose it. He held his end of the deal up, but then he ended up getting short-handed. They gave him the short end of the stick. Then he got mad and wanted to seek revenge on those who called themselves the Jewish people. That's what that was. If they had helped their end of the deal up, just like he held his end of the deal up, it wouldn't even been any kind of Nazi war. The Nazi war wouldn't have never been against the so-called Jewish people. That was something that was artificial and it was made up. Though the tragedy is real, but it was tailored. See what I'm saying? It was tailored. But these, there's nothing tailored about it. It's authentic as my hair. It's authentic as the words on my hat. It's real. You can see the pain. You can feel the pain. A lot of you, as you watching this video, you can get upset. Some of you might even get pissed. That's to be expected. And some of you, you may not feel nothing at all. And I would say we need to pray for you. Because this is what happened to our people. You're a part of this. So yes, we have a winner. They are the people. You are the people. Let's continue to see what our people went through.
We have a winner on who the prophecy fits. So far, the so-called African Americans who came over on the transatlantic slave trade ships have matched the curses and the 400-year prophecy. Now, we all know the motives for the surrounding nations. It is now safe to call these people true Israel. Israel became collateral for the exchange of firearms, rum, and everything else. Israel became the down payment for the enemy's needs. Even after being caught, put onto ships, if a ship or a captain or whoever needed something to finish their journey, they will often give Israel captives in exchange for the needed goods. This would not be the end, but only the beginning of the 400-year prophecy of being enslaved and oppressed as slaves. After slavery, mistreatment never stopped. It got even worse. They hate to see us free. We're going to look at some things about that. Right. The Devil's Punch Bowl, 20,000 freed slaves died. This is after slavery, so-called. Never forget the Devil's Punch Bowl. 20,000 free slaves died after being forced again into post-slavery concentration camps. One camp. All right, let's go. History has always made concentration camps to be synonymous with atrocities of Nazi Germany. But America has its own dirty secrets about the use of concentration camps. These camps were located in Natchez, Mississippi, and were used to corral freed slaves during and after the American Civil War that we just saw. That, remember, we had no place in anything civil. Nothing. As slaves were being emancipated from the plantations, their route to freedom usually took them in the vicinity of the Union Army forces. Unhappy with the slaves being freed, the army began recapturing the slaves and forced the men back into hard labor camps. The most notorious of the several concentration camps that were established was located in Natchez, Mississippi. This is the U.S. government that's doing this. The military. The I want you in the U.S. Army. Let's look what happened.
You know, it's a shame that they keep saying that all men are created equal. But most don't mean that. They don't. It's like they can't stand to see us free. And I use free loosely. But it's in a restrictive manner. What I mean by that? As long as we are here, we will never be free. Freedom comes from being in the right position, the right place at the right time. It's not really so much as a matter of circumstance. It's a matter of being in your right place. There is many things that our people experience even after slavery that is recorded. There's a thing with the devil punch bowl, and that was gruesome, horrible. We have many things that prompted the civil rights movement. We have Tulsa, Oklahoma burnings. They call it the riot wars. Just saying the riot wars is just another way of saying something that goes on every day to make it seem like it's very minute. No, it's not just a riot war. A riot is when there's people who is fighting for certain justice. This was not people fighting for justice. This was people who was taking justice or so-called justice in their own hands because a person who stood up to one of them and they didn't like that. And so this person wasn't being charged with anything. All charges was being dropped against them, but they have made a pledge to kill this boy. And then when our people stood up for themselves, then the cowards begin to go try to play big bully. What you gotta understand is this: it wasn't just a regular citizen coming against our people. It was a whole union. I'm talking about United States of America military, army, rifle, soldiers, and the help of the president to come against not even a city, a block, a community, our people. They won't say that in the video, but that's what happened. They called in the military. Then they called for the president. The president had them drop bombs from the sky, from planes, bombing buildings. And while the people are trying to come out the houses, they got a 50 cal mowing down anything that is moving. This was not a riot war. This was straight up war in a community against a people. This is the Black or the Children of Israel Holocaust. This is not a riot war, it's the Black Holocaust. Let's look.
You know, there's a lot of things within the history of America that's been hidden from all of us, especially us within the Black community. And if you allow this school system to educate you and not really educate yourself, you're not going to know much of anything. Now, there was a place called the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi. And this was a concentration camp for Black people. America never speak about the concentration camp that they have for Black people. Let's go ahead and roll that clip.
Untouched fruit falls to the ground near the banks of the Mississippi River.
They talk about there's the most beautiful wild peach groves down in the punch bowl.
And researcher Paula Westbrook says, like a peach, the area known as the Devil's Punch Bowl has a pit, a mass grave from the 1860s. Historians estimate that in 1 year, up to 20,000 freed slaves died in contraband camps below these bluffs.
When the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez, and the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight.
So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out.
Don Estes is the former director of the Natchez City Cemetery.
I just put my own tombstone right there. You see Estes?
Learning history's been his life. He says Union troops ordered recaptured black men to perform hard labor.
Straight down right here.
While women and children were all but left to die in the 3 punch bowl prisons.
Disease broke out among them, smallpox being the main one, and thousands died. They were begging to get out, turn me loose and I'll go home back to the plantation, anywhere but there. But they wouldn't let them out.
The Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. They just gave them shovels and said bury them where they drop.
And I'd really like to show you more of this terrain, but it's just too thick with greenery. These bluffs are also straight down, so not only is it dangerous to navigate, it's still very mysterious back there.
It's a bed of alligators and snakes. It would take Indiana Jones to get back in there at this point.
Then you come on up washing away bluffs, and at the Devil's Punch Bowl that has so many people that no one knows how they got killed or when, and they're still down there wasted.
And even to this day, they talk about wild peach trees that come up down there, but no one in Natchez will eat them because they know what the fertilizer was.
All right, Al, thanks very much. Today marks the 75th anniversary of a police-protected white riot that took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Despite the prevailing racism of the time, the black citizens of Tulsa had made a pretty good life for themselves shortly after World War I. But on the night of May 31, 1921, racial violence destroyed everything they had. Back in the early 1900s, Tulsa, Oklahoma was a city exploding with opportunity. With the discovery of oil, the money that flowed into Tulsa made it one of America's wealthiest boom towns. Some of the town's newfound riches landed in the hands of Tulsa's black residents, many of whom worked for white employers. But because blacks were unwelcome in white-owned stores, they brought their hard-earned wages back to their own community, a community known as Greenwood. There they built up a thriving business district that was so successful, it was called the Black Wall Street of America.
If you wanted to put up a business, that was the place to put it up. There were theaters, barbecue places, grocery stores, jewelry shops, shoe shine parlors. I mean, all black businesses, all up and down Greenwood.
And we had our everything in those days. We had our plumbers, our electricians, our builders.
Everybody owned their own businesses and everybody was making money.
Despite their relative prosperity, Tulsa's black citizens regularly felt the pains of racism. The Ku Klux Klan had a strong foothold in Oklahoma, and lynchings were all too common. Yet no one was prepared for the violent turn of events that ended in a bloody riot of Tulsa's white population. It all started with the arrest of a black teenager named Dick Rowland. Though the charges were eventually dropped, Rowland was charged with assaulting a white girl.
That afternoon, the Tribune, the Tulsa Tribune, which was the local paper at that time, came out with the article about what happened, and then said at the end, looked like there's going to be a lynching in Tulsa tonight.
That evening, several thousand whites gathered outside the courthouse where Rowland was being held.
As soon as the lynch mob began to gather downtown around the courthouse where Dick Rowland was held, a group of black men, many of them World War I veterans, gathered themselves into cars and guns and went downtown to stop this thing. A white man tried to disarm a black vet. A struggle ensued and a shot went off, and at that point the race riot was on.
A mob of armed whites invaded Greenwood, looting stores and homes and setting black Tulsa on fire.
You could see the smoke and the fire, and you could hear the guns shooting. I said to my mother, I said, Mama, I said, we better get out of here, because I said, they're burning the place down on Cincinnati, and they're shooting one another. And I said, they're going to kill us.
Mother said, here they come, here they come. And they came in the house with torches, and they set the house on fire. Oh, it was like a nightmare. Everything was in flames.
Disarmed by Tulsa's white police force, black citizens were unable to defend themselves. The authorities detained about 60 white rioters, but none of them were ever charged. 6,000 blacks, meanwhile, were marched off to internment centers while their beloved Greenwood burned to the ground.
There wasn't a building standing. When we went to where we lived, knew where it was, but there wasn't anything around in any room but ashes.
In a single day, Black Tulsa was reduced to rubble. All told, 35 blocks were destroyed, scores of people were dead, and more than 5,000 blacks were left homeless.
To wake up and see nothing but ashes and buildings burnt to the ground, charred, you couldn't keep the tears back.
Many of those who survived the riot had to endure a bitter winter with little more than a canvas tent to shelter them. But black Tulsans would not be defeated. They began rebuilding Greenwood even while the ashes were still smoldering. By borrowing and earning what they needed, Black Tulsa rose again.
By 1925, Greenwood was once again a thriving business district. You saw the return of the theaters, the return of the restaurants and the chili parlors. There was a black-owned bus line. Greenwood rose again and returned to its earlier glories.
Ironically, the Greenwood that had endured so much hate could not survive the changes brought on by the civil rights movement. Desegregation and the move to urban renewal left Black Tulsa in decay. Today, Greenwood is attempting yet another comeback and drawing inspiration from the memory of years past. Memories now recalled in a photo exhibit at the Greenwood Cultural Center, where a new memorial is planned in tribute to the courage and determination of the Black Tulsans who still hope that Greenwood will rise again. It's 1:15 the hour. We're going to shift gears in just a moment, go outside and taste a couple of desserts.
Now, there's always something that triggers a movement, if you will. Like, such as this right here, the call. The Father told me to do this. He told me to make video. Not to call it the calling, but to call it the call. And he gave me specifics. And so, I'm just sticking with it. But Emmett Till, his death ignited a flame that to this day has not been put out. Just like Trayvon Martin ignited a flame called Black Lives Matter. Trayvon Martin, in a sense, is our Emmett Till. It's just like Emmett Till started the civil rights movement. Trayvon Martin started Black Lives Matter. What human would beat like an 8-year-old boy, maybe a teenager, maybe he wasn't even a teenager? What make you beat a child beyond recognition? I mean, you had to be not just hitting them with your fists, but maybe hitting them with a bat, a crowbar. They tortured that boy before they hung him. and then threw his body in a river or a lake or a pond or water, wherever. But they tortured him while he was alive before they hung him. So while he's alive, being hung, he's trying to console his wounds, but can't console his wounds because he's being suffocated. And is in his last moments, probably thinking, why is this happening to me? Being falsely accused. But he doesn't have a voice. Or he has a voice, but no one wants to hear it. For those who say it doesn't matter, take a look at this video. You tell me. Does it matter?
I believe that the whole United States is mourning with me. And if the death of my son can mean something to the other unfortunate people all over the world, then for him to have died a hero would mean more to me than for him just to have died.
Emmett Till, 14, was kidnapped and killed allegedly for wolf whistling at the wife of accused Roy Bryant.
It's not just that they discover his body and that he's been killed. He has been brutally, brutally beaten. As a criminal defense attorney, when we look at crimes, we often try to put together a picture about what happened, and it takes a lot of hatred and a lot of rage to do the kind of violence that was done to Emmett Till. Being a black boy in the American South could be quite perilous. The allegation that Emmett Till was being social with a white woman was considered an affront, a threat to the racial order. And I think the shock of his death was compounded by the brutality of his death. Emmett's mother couldn't actually conform to the conventions of the time, and she did something really quite remarkable. She made the really unorthodox choice of having a funeral with an open casket that was going to be very widely publicized, that was going to be attended by the national press. She wanted civil rights leaders and political leaders to see what they did to her child. She invited David Jackson and Jet magazine to take pictures of this child's battered body. And these images were widely circulated. Jet magazine was a publication that was primarily produced and distributed to the African American community that had been trying to educate the rest of the country about the horrors of segregation and racial violence and lynching in the American South. And the images were really, really challenging. It was the kind of visual that you didn't typically see. You certainly didn't see it outside of a war zone, and you certainly didn't see it with children. His face was grotesque. You could see eyes, but you couldn't really distinguish all of his facial features. That's how much violence he had been subjected to. Emmett's mother's presence in the photo is really important because she's really giving witness to victimization and violence. The other images that Emmett's mother provided just created this notion of a very respectable young boy who was trying to make the very best impression on everyone he met. The juxtaposition of a little boy in a suit and a tie with his battered face was a stark image that made it really impossible for anyone who saw it to be silent about it. Mainstream publications like Look and Life began talking about this issue. It became an issue that elected officials were being questioned about. These images made it impossible for white families in other parts of the country to stay indifferent, to stay neutral.
Never has this quiet little cotton-growing community of Mississippi seen so much publicity and so much excitement as in the past few days. Nearly 200 of the town's 500 or 600 residents have packed into the courthouse to hear the day's proceedings.
Do you have any evidence bearing on this case?
I do know that this is my son.
How long do you expect to be here?
Until the trial is over.
Bryant and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, were acquitted by this jury. And subsequently, even though they admitted taking the boy from the house, they were freed of kidnap charges.
The inability to hold anyone accountable for his murder and the comfort with which the men who killed him were able to talk about the violence was just adding to the injury. They weren't just killing a boy. They're expressing something rooted in this decades of animosity and fear and anger.
A boy, a 14-year-old boy, was killed brutally. And one of our objectives here is to see to it that that boy whose picture you see there does not die an inconspicuous death, and that his case will be remembered and something will be done about it.
These images became powerful forces in organizing a new level of commitment and resistance. The brutal murder of Emmett Till really pushed Rosa Parks to a deeper level of activism. That was one of the motivating forces behind her choice to not give up her seat on that bus. And in many ways, it was an organizing and galvanizing moment for the civil rights movement in this country. These shootings of unarmed black boys and men have been going on for decades. It is a manifestation of this same presumption of dangerousness that killed Emmett Till, that killed thousands of people of color during the lynching era. Imagery and photography is a really important tool. Without the imagery, there would be no one who's prepared to believe some of the violence that we've witnessed.
It's such a gratifying feeling to see you all sitting by and standing by, because I realized shortly after this thing happened that it wasn't a fight that I could do, that it was going to be a fight that we had to do, that the people would do for me, more or less. And
we've never made progress in this country around important social justice issues until we've given marginal victims a face. That image still has resonance, it still has power, and I think it still expresses the pain and anguish of a huge part of our population that is still hoping for basic recognition of their humanity.
And I want you all to stand by me because it's going to be a fight. And if you will stand by me, I will stand by you because I am not afraid.
Now, George Steeny, I get choked up every single time I think about him. I think about what happened. Like, they ran that boy's father out of town so they can literally kill this boy. I mean, these people have hate in their heart that they want to just murder us. It was even said that George Stinney said, why they want to kill me? I didn't do nothing to them. Why do they want to kill me? I'm innocent. I didn't touch none of them girls. But just because they crossed his path and he talked to them last before they wound up dead, they literally questioned him for hours, trying to force him to say something that he didn't say. And then I think the last minute, he probably never said yes. They just said, you know what, we're just gonna just do it anyway. And says, oh, the boy said that he confessed to the murders. Really? He confessed to the murders. But this is not, there's no audio, no nothing. Usually when you confess to the murders, there's audio saying that you did it. There's no audio. It's just their word versus his word. And at this time, his word don't mean nothing. So it's just their word, their hate, their anger. This boy was so small that he couldn't fit even in the electric chair. But they was making sure they was going to fry him. Though, in the video, they'll show that our people, or his people, was there. There was nobody of his color in the courtroom or at the time, or the time of execution. They ran his father out of town. So yeah, it's literally based on a true story. Meaning, we took out the parts that really wouldn't be beneficial to us. We took out the part that's really messed up. His father wasn't there. They ran him out of town. They threatened him. They left that boy to defend his own self, knowing he was dead. Let's see.
In June of 1944, a 14-year-old boy was executed in the electric chair in South Carolina. 3 months earlier, George Stinney Jr., an African American, and his sister were playing in their yard. 2 white girls, ages 8 and 11, stopped and asked them where they could find flowers. Later, those girls failed to return home, and a search party was organized to find them. The following morning, their dead bodies were found in a shallow ditch. 14-year-old Stinney was arrested. The only evidence against him was the circumstantial fact that he had spoken with the girls the day before. Stinney was subjected to hours of interrogation without his parents or an attorney. The sheriff later claimed he confessed to the murders, although no written or signed statement was presented. Stinney faced a sham trial, virtually alone. with no African Americans allowed inside the courthouse, and his lawyer failed to call a single witness. The entire trial, including jury deliberations, lasted less than 3 hours. George Stinney Jr. was convicted of first-degree murder. He was the youngest person executed in the United States in the 20th century.
Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. O my God, do I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed.
How you coming there,
Be
Junior?
ashamed which transgress without cause. Show
How
me
long
thy
before?
ways, O Lord. Show me thy paths. Lead me in thy
Son,
way. Teach me. For thou
you're going
art
to be
the
seeing
God
some things that may not set too well.
do I wait all
When we get home, I got enough of that peach brandy for both of us.
according to thy mercy. Remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. This'll only last a moment. Think about it like you're leaping over a wide ditch. And when you land, you'll be in heaven.
Junior, I'll be jumping over a big ditch. Heaven's on the other side.
Is there anything you want to say? Any last words?
Please, can we go?
It's been decades since the civil rights movement, but a piece of history has returned, shedding light on our country's dark past. Now, one author has made it her mission to use a new discovery as a teaching tool for the future.
So for years, there was a metal plate that covered this portion of the wall. Nobody knew what was behind it.
Buried inside the old Dallas County Records building.
We have a W, H,
letters spelling out a moment in history many hope to forget.
E-O-N-L-Y. One day in 2003, the metal plate just somehow fell off, and what was revealed was this ghostly, faint trace that says white only.
For artist Lauren Woods, it brought back memories of her own childhood.
I remember being 7 years old, watching Eye on the Prize when it first was airing on PBS, sitting in my mother's lap and not understanding what I was seeing, not understanding how, you know, at the time I didn't have the words for it, but such violence could be enacted on people, especially people that looked like my grandmother, my mother.
A time not too long ago when whites and blacks were not allowed to drink from the same water fountain.
I think about my own family, my ancestors, who had to look at this disgusting, you know, sign and deal with the disgusting, culture that existed during this time period that didn't allow them to do something just as simple as taking a drink from a fountain.
It's then Woods decided to turn a painful piece of history into an interactive teaching tool for the present. Raising nearly $45,000, the project named Drinking Fountain Number 1 was born.
It's an interventionist multimedia monument is what I'm calling it. When you come to get a drink of water, instead of water coming on, you'll actually get a video projection in this area. After the video plays, then the water will come on. The monument is to commemorate the spirit of people who fought to get these sort of Jim Crow signs taken down to change and shift the culture of the United States. Because it will always be with us, no matter how much we try to forget it, erase it. People are really focused on the white only and thinking that we're commemorating this particular history of white only signs, of Jim Crow signs, and that's not what this project is about. This actually is here to exist to have a conversation.
A conversation Woods hopes will begin with a simple sip of water.
The Civil Rights Movement! Even though the Civil War ended many years ago, a problem still remained in the United States that concerned African Americans: segregation. Due to the allowance of what were called Jim Crow laws, anything from segregated buses to swimming pools were considered to be constitutional. However, during the 50s, many African Americans began to take action against these laws. Some of these actions included Rosa Parks' refusal to leave her seat on the bus, Brown versus Board of Education, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s efforts as a nonviolent protest leader. All of these led up to the abolishment of segregation in the United States. Perhaps we should begin by talking about Brown versus Board of Education. In this court case, the parents of a young African-American girl named Linda Brown sued a school in Topeka, Kansas, with the help of an organization called the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. They did this because their daughter was refused acceptance into the school because of her race. On May 17, 1954, the Supreme Court ruled segregation in schools unconstitutional because of Brown versus Board of Education. This caused uproar across the United States. During the uproar, a woman by the name of Rosa Parks defied Montgomery's segregation laws. She was on her way home from her job as a seamstress when she sat down in the middle of a bus with 3 other African Americans. As the bus began to fill up, the driver asked Parks and the other 3 to move so that a white man could take their place. At first, none of them budged, but then the driver threatened him. The other 3 African Americans left their seat, but Parks would not budge.
I ain't moving 1 inch from this here seat.
The driver called Montgomery police and they arrested Parks. News of this reached E.D. Nixon, and he asked Parks for her permission to take her case to court. She said he could, if he thought it would mean something to Montgomery and do some good. After Rosa Parks' act of defiance and arrest, many African Americans became enraged. Jo Ann Robinson, head of a local organization called Women's Political Council, asked African Americans to boycott Montgomery's bus system on the day that Rosa Parks would appear in court. That same afternoon, other African American leaders met and formed the Montgomery Improvement Association and elected a 26-year-old pastor by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. to lead them. This boycott came to be known as the Montgomery Bus Boycott and lasted 381 days. In 1959, 4 African Americans started what became known as the sit-in movement. This was a movement in which African Americans would go to whites-only restaurants, hotels, and movie theaters and just sit. These sit-ins had spread to 54 cities and 9 states. The participants were usually college students, and this at first worried members of the SCLC, or Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the NAACP because they were afraid that the young protesters may not be able to stay nonviolent. However, the students proved them wrong for the most part. After this event, people known as Freedom Riders began to take action on Southern bus systems that refused to integrate bus terminals. Teams of Freedom Riders consisted of both African Americans and whites. In early May of 1961, some of the first Freedom Riders boarded southbound interstate buses. When the buses arrived at their destinations in the South, angry white mobs attacked them by throwing stones at the windows and slashing their tires. After these many events, things began to slowly get better in the United States for African Americans. With the help of Martin Luther King Jr. and many other American activists, such as Rosa Parks, integration and equality was finally made possible in the United States.
Mrs. Bridges, are you personally aware of prejudice in Birmingham?
Well, of course, I guess there's a certain amount of prejudice, but I'm not aware of there being much prejudice. Nothing like the people of the North seem to think. Among my friends, we don't seem to have any particular prejudice.
Beats by other songs.
Truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors. Hey, when you learn the truth, it will set you free. Many are held captive, stolen identity. But let me just shoot the breeze, release you from Satan's squeeze. He's all like enemies, no matter the color you see. That truth frame. Truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, yeah, truth colors. Though it's not our fight, Mount Zion's a lion, the brutes are free fall, better off alone. We have to come together, none can stand on their own. Put away our stubbornness, leave sin alone. Living by the truth, we honor God's word. Don't say what you won't do, ears have not heard, eyes have not seen, Mount Zion redeemed. We wait for the outcome, we wait for the King. Judah promoted, full gospel in motion. Religion retorted, mishandle God's word. Denoted, misquoted, flying with vultures. Wolves in sheep clothing, destroying our culture. Yahusha, he knows the sheep that's his own. Abide in the word, the fathers are home. The sound and earth tones, aligning of the bones. Can't stand in free fall, better off alone. We have to come together, none can stand on their own. Put away our stubbornness, leave sin alone. The sound and earth tones, aligning of the bones. Can't stand in free fall, better off alone. We have to come together, none can stand on their own. Put away our stubbornness, leave sin alone. No man shall save thee. We have had many movements, many so-called leaders. Well, not us per se, but our ancestors. And none of those leaders could free us. That's because Father made it that way. He didn't want us to be able to say that we delivered ourselves. No. The only way out of this is by turning completely to Him. The sad thing is this, though. The curses, if you will, are still alive and well on us. And we're going to look at this and we're going to see that this curse is still on us. Our people were lynched back then, but has the lynchings stopped? And if not, why? Because the curses were meant to be a sign upon the real people. Just like the blessing will be a sign upon the real people. Let's take a look and see.
Now, let's look at this. I have a dream, right? No man shall save thee. That dream was designed to save us, right? There's other references of scripture. So let's look at this. I feel I have integrated my people into a burning house. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as intimated to Harry, intimate. So pretty much he said this to him intimately, like he pulled him to the side, like, all right. So everyone else, he's saying to their face, I have a dream. But then Harry Belafonte, man, I feel like I just messed up. I mean, they said we won, but I feel like I just caused my people to all enter into a building and for people to set it on fire. It was not the right thing to do, he was saying. Maybe he was saying segregation was put there for a reason. that no man was supposed to remove because it kept the people separate. But scripture had to be fulfilled that we would not only serve our enemies, but we will begin to serve other mighty ones. Let's go. So we have, who is this? This is the Black Panthers. Couldn't save us. Malcolm X couldn't save us. Al Sharpton, Jay-Z, none of them save us. No music, none of the entertainment could save us. Obama, people reverence him, boy, like he's almost the Messiah. Can't save us. In fact, we had more people die of our own people under his administration than it's just crazy. There's many people that died up under his administration, being that he's supposed to be part of us. Shouldn't have been. He should have been fighting tooth and nail for us, but that wasn't the case. More people died up under him than we've seen so far. Bill Clinton, people reverenced him, but he's the one who actually brought in the 3 strikes and you're out law for jails. So a lot of our people are packed in jail. Why? Because of Bill Clinton, the savior, right? Bill Clinton was a black man, really? But he's the one who actually is locking up our people, right? You can be petty crime. You do it 3 times. Guess what? You locked up. He locked you into prison. Here we go. Abraham Lincoln. It's been said that Abraham Lincoln actually was one of us, but they try to keep that hidden. They got some similarities there. It's not the first time that they've done that. If you've never seen the video, White It Out, go check it out by Deborah Yai and Watchmen Reports. Here we go, Jesse Jackson. Right? All these people sellouts. Right? He's a sellout. Definitely sellouts. He's working. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He sold out. All right. They was gunned down, gunned down, gunned down. Look at this. NAACP does not, or AACP does not stand for what it is no more. It's literally not owned by the people who first initiated. They don't help us no more, or pretty much have never helped. Father says, no man shall save thee. His scripture is going to stand throughout the test of time. And everyone else who tries to assume to try to deliver us without us calling or without us returning, it's going to fail every single time. Let's go. So meat for a multitude, right? 28, 26, and thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. This still goes on till this day, right? So when our people was hung on trees, there would be birds, fowls of the air, right? Where are they going to land? They see meat. Look at this. So they're jumping on slaves and they're eating their carcass. Then you got dogs on the ground. If they can reach up and nab on the slaves, the person who just got hanged, feet, the master just let them just chew on their body because they're dead. They didn't say, oh, stop eating on his leg, or stop eating on her leg, or stop eating on that child's leg, or stop, or throw a rock at the bird who's trying to, pluck out the slave's eyes and eat them. They didn't stop that. They hung up in those trees for days and rotted, and the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air was able to feast on the bodies of the Israelites. Now, that's a great dishonor to an Israelite, because an Israelite who was never buried mean they were cursed. Cursed is everyone who hangs from a tree.
A new museum on America's history of lynchings was opened this week on the former site of a slave pen in Montgomery, Alabama. where black people were once imprisoned before being sold at auction. The Legacy Museum, From Enslavement to Mass Incarceration, serves as a reminder of America's racist legacy and offers visitors a glimpse into the tragic history of the slave trade. A national memorial for peace and justice is located a few blocks from the museum and features more than 800 steel monuments that bear the names of lynching victims throughout the country. NBC News reports that in its creation, organizers discovered the names of 4,400 black people who were lynched or died in racial killings between 1877 and 1950.
Peace, love, and light, family. It's your girl, Ada, coming to you here live in a living color with Zaya today with another informative topic and video. Peace and love, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well out there. This particular segment is going to be talking about the series of events that have been happening down south in regards to these mysterious murders that are occurring down there. This particular one is coming out of Fullerton, Georgia. This woman, was found hanging on a tree by a Walmart out in Fullerton, Georgia. And this is just really weird, family. Now, we all know that the South and that this particular corporate construct has been hanging people since they arrived here. Not only hanging black people, but scalping them alive, burning them alive at the stake. This stuff went on. And it's just really, really weird that they're saying at this particular lynching. Now remember, there was another lynching of a young man in Atlanta like a couple of weeks ago. He was found hung, and they viewed that as a suicide and no lynching, no foul play. And then on this particular murder, an incident with this woman, they're saying that it was a suicide and that no foul play was determined. That is fucking bullshit. And it definitely needs to be investigated further. And the reason why they're not going to investigate it is because there is foul play. But the foul play is with the organized Klan and police department. You have to understand that the Klan and the police departments across America are one and the same. I'll repeat that again. All the cops around America are one and the same with the Klan. It is a brotherhood. It is a fraternal order. Okay, the Klan was birthed out of the Democratic Party. And see, we're going to start to see more of this because black people don't want to wake up to separate from these demons and these devils. Now you got another woman whose life was taken. There's no telling what happened to this woman or how it happened, but I believe that she deserves to have the right to be investigated on what actually occurred. They're just not ruling it just suspecting that there wasn't any foul play. How the hell do they know that? They don't know that. I just think this is really sad. I think it's unfortunate that this woman is dead. They found her hanging on a tree, not too far from a Walmart.
Greetings and salutations. I'm Christopher Platt, reporting for your Black World News with an article from the Atlanta Black Star. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and visit theblackbusinessschool.com to learn about financial literacy and how you can grow your business today. A man was found hanging from a bridge over Martin Luther King Jr. Drive around 6:30 p.m. Friday evening in Atlanta. The incident occurred near the Atlanta University Center, and police officials believe the victim committed suicide, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported. Carol Campos, Atlanta police spokesman, stated Saturday that no foul play was indicated. Atlanta Police Sergeant John Chafee said the preliminary examination showed that a chain was wrapped around the victim's neck and secured in different places. Chafee stated that keys were found in the male's pockets. Investigators told police officials that a person around the area heard someone yelling, "Don't do it," Chafee relayed to the news sources. The incident caused traffic delays in the area, and one driver by the Twitter username JFN Hollywood recorded the tragedy. But it also left people questioning whether it was really a suicide or a possible racist message representing a lynching. Tariq Nasheed wrote, "Last week there was a Nazi rally in GA, and today a black man was found hanging from the MLK Drive bridge in Atlanta. Police there are ruling it a suicide. These are not suicides," end quote. Another user commented, "Black people don't fit this profile. This is what it is, modern day slavery and lynching. The don't do it was a false alarm to cover it up." CR blah blah said, "Forensically impossible for that to be a suicide. The length of the rope would have made it impossible to do. This is homicide, racially motivated homicide." Police officials believe the victim was a black male in his mid to late 20s. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to share this video and let us know what you think. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Your Black World YouTube channel and visit theblackbusinessschool.com today. I'm Christopher Platt reporting. Until next time, shalom.
Now this is gonna piss some people off. But you know what? I don't really care about feelings. Be mad. The only life that matters on the earth is black lives. Period. Take it how you want to take it. But I'm siding with scripture. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 17 says that. Fact. Let me pull it up, so you will see that I'm not making this up. The only time in the video you see me do this. Well, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 17. Boom. I'll read the King James Version. In fact, I'll read it from my favorite Bible hub. Let's get it. All right. It says, all nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing and worthless. That's the King James 2000 Bible. Let me say that again, because you need to understand this. Okay, let's do this again. All nations, that means everyone outside of Israel, before him are as nothing. Nothing means like zilch, right? So it's already nothing. When you look in your pocket, some people were like, well, what do you have, to help out with something? And people put in their pocket and they come out with lint. You know what I'm saying? Like just zilch, right? Come out with this. It's nothing, right? Then it goes deeper and say, and they are counted to him less than nothing. So wait a minute. So you already have nothing. Then you are less than what you don't have. You're already nothing, but then now you are less than what you don't have. So it means like if you didn't have any value before, which you don't, then it means like now you are less than the value that you don't even have. Meaning this, he has brought you down to 0. And then on top of the 0, he adds a minus, which puts you in debt. So he has literally unbalanced you. So what he's saying literally in respect is like all of the nations outside of Israel is unbalanced. Meaning you're not perfect. And people say, oh, no man's perfect. The word says that be ye perfect, even as your Father in the Shemayim is perfect. And he said that the nations are not perfect. They're before him as nothing. It's a balance of 0. Then he goes further and says, you are less than nothing. You are wanting. You are out of balance. You are not on his level. I didn't say it, but he said it. So then he said, now watch this. See, you can see it. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing and worthless. Meaning you have no value whatsoever. So now it's, you've been taken down to 0. Now you've been put into debt, right? Negative. Now you could be considered to like, just all together, you don't have any worth to you. There's pretty much he's saying like this. You have nothing that I want that's of any value. Out of all the so-called value that you might assume you have, when it comes to him and the nations all put together as one, he says, I don't want anything from you. You are worthless. So, with that being said, the children of Israel's lives on the face of this earth are the only lives that matter. Everyone else's life means less than nothing. It's worthless. Don't believe me? Let's look.
Who had the camera? Where was the camera? Oh my God, they caught this on camera.
It was one of the most disturbing things that we'd seen on video.
The videotaped beating of Rodney King had left many Los Angeles residents outraged.
It was like the first time we had actually seen it. So it was shocking, but at the same time, it was wonderful because now we Americans, we African Americans, we had evidence of our claims of, injustice and mistreatment.
The idea of watching that video originally, give me your reaction to when you saw the Rodney King video. Give me what you felt initially.
I was waiting for somebody to stop it, and the fact that no one came and no one was able to stop it. The Rodney King video in and of itself ignited a culture of wanting to get involved.
I don't think you'd be exaggerating to say this was the first viral video recorded by an individual on amateur equipment. Here we had this video of an event that had just happened. And now today, cell phone videos of horrible events are things we see nearly every day. Back then, this was a whole new ballgame.
There was no way that these officers could not be held responsible for their action. There's no way they could be acquitted. Now we would certainly see justice being done.
The Rodney King video laid the groundwork for Black activism because it showed that This was a level of brutality that no one had ever seen. It also showcased that you really didn't have a choice to not get involved. I think that the Rodney King video was so pivotal in terms of black activism.
What happened to Rodney King without that video would probably never have even made the news. With that video, that Rodney King beating became a huge story.
We, the jury, find the defendants not guilty.
When the officers were acquitted, it literally said that you could beat a black man in the street, the world could see it, and yet it made no difference. So it was more than a betrayal. The message it sent, what it said to me was, as that I was worthless.
Appeals this evening for calm in Los Angeles.
Is it getting better?
It's very hard for me to say that it's getting better. Mothers are still going to be telling their kids to fear for the police, telling their kids to avoid the police at all costs. Because to be honest, there isn't right now anything out there that says that this is going to stop.
That would do it for The Call Part 2. Thank you for watching. Keep a lookout for The Call Part 3. And have a good day. Shalom. Oh yeah. Please, if you haven't done so, comment on the video. I love comments, good or bad. Share, like it, and subscribe. And hit the notification button so you know when I post new videos. It's gonna be more videos like this. And thank you for watching Part 2 of The Call with me. And shalom.